Blindspot Season 2, Episode 17, Solace. This is a pretty good episode. I thought it was pretty fun, even though it kind of straight, well, I shouldn't even say kind of, it just had nothing to do with Sandstorm, outside of, like, the references that Jane made over the phone, and, like, the minute memories that we got to see from Roman. There really wasn't a lot of Sandstorm in this episode, but it was still a good episode. We get to, of course, see Jane and Oliver end up waking up. And naturally, this episode was based around Oliver. It had nothing to do with Sandstorm trying to get Jane or anything like that, which, you know, I figured, based on the way that episode ended, like, you know, it just isn't something Sandstorm would do. And so we find out that this crazy setup with Jane and Oliver, as well as these two young kids being captured and he kind of ransomed off, this actually comes from Oliver's father, which relates to why he changed his name. But it comes from his father and his father's business partner being absolute criminals who stole like $200 million from all sorts of innocent clients, and then they kind of just left the country. And I thought that was actually a pretty cool story to kind of have and conclude all in, you know, one episode. So they have it where Oliver's father, he took off, and like Oliver never saw him again, and he mentioned, like, you know, he always called him, but the voicemails never, you know, the box never filled up, so he knew he was checking them and everything. And then we later find out that his father was like dead in like France or something like that. So that was very interesting, and his business partner was still alive, and she kind of just retired and ultimately, I guess, just kind of escaped. Like, she just was like, well, I'm not going to take off and leave everything behind. But his dad his dad freaked out and apparently left the country. And his dad's business partner, she was kind of just like, nah, I'm going to sit over here. I was like, man, I guess his dad really freaked out. So he just left. And it was just cool the way they went through that story and how Jane and Oliver kind of had this odd back and forth. Like, you know, we don't really know each other. And, you know, like, it starts off where Jane is like, I'm sorry you got wrapped up in this, I got enemies and stuff, and then he mentions that he knows they're in Vermont, and so she freaks out and like pins him against the wall, like, the shepherd sends you and stuff. So it was just really cool, that back and forth they had in this episode. Like, yes, I can do this, you know, I have certain skills, I'm part of the FBI, I know this stuff and that stuff, and you have a father who did this. So they had very interesting relationship issues, you know, from their past that they, you know, some of those things they had to kind of work through in order to survive in this situation. And I really loved that. I thought it was really good. Things kept changing. You know, they were constantly half escaping. You know, they have the beginning of it where, you know, they break the camera. Jane's idea was great. Guy comes into the door, beat up a person or two, and then like 8 other people seem to file in. And then when they're in the actual living room, they beat everybody up. Oliver actually ends up killing one of the guys, and that kind of freaks him out. And then right at the door, and then boom, here's 3 other guys, you know, the main guy, and then kind of his right-hand man. And then we have it where Oliver is about to, well, technically he does live, but he's about to be shot in the head, and Jane's able to convince the guy not to do it because, you know, it just wouldn't mean the same thing, because this guy clearly didn't care about his son like you did your daughter. So I'm like, okay, she was able to do kind of the hero speech, and she convinced the bad guy to stop. And then he gets killed by his right-hand man, and it switched everything up all over again. I was like, okay, let's see where we go from here. So ultimately, everything, of course, ends up panning out. But I actually like the way they did it for such a, you know, simple episode compared to what they normally do, where they're going from this location to that location. It was the office, the cabin in Vermont, and then the other house. I can't remember where they mentioned that was. But it was pretty simple, and it was really enjoyable to watch them kind of struggle and how to survive and kind of half escape constantly back and forth. So I really enjoyed that. The other side of this story, we of course have Reed. I don't know where the heck things are headed for him. He does have the conversation with Weller pretty early on in the episode, so I was happy about that. And he has him, you know, take a leave of absence. And I just don't know what to expect. Not only is he forced to take a leave of absence, but before that, we find out that he went to the woman's house, and she has a kid, and she's like, oh, you're too much of a druggie, you gotta go, I can't be with you. And I'm like, wow, she got him hooked on coke, and then she's like, I got a kid, so you can't be around me anymore. I was just like, that really blows. Like, when someone, like, she's the one that got him on drugs, and now she's like, you're too much for me. And I just thought that was insane. I was like, wow, she dumped him, and she just got him hooked on drugs. So it was just crazy. So not only does that happen to him, but of course he has to take a leave of absence, and who the heck knows where that's headed. I mean, he gets beat up. I kind of hope, as sucky as that scene was for him to get busted, which How the F did that one guy remember of all the people? He's like, I mean, I guess it's like, I'm black, he's black, I remember him. I don't know, but he remembered like one dude from a raid. I think he mentioned that it was a long time ago too, and I'm like, how would he remember what anyone looked like in a raid? Who is so focused? I mean, I guess you see one face, it kind of sticks with you because you think you're probably about to get shot if you do something. It's a raid. So maybe, but I was just like, wow, of all the people, he picked the dude whose cousin he raided, which that was another thing. I guess the guy was at the raid when I first heard him say it. I thought he was saying like his cousin told him they got raided, but he was at the raid. So of course he gets kicked like crazy. They beat the crap out of him in the middle of the alley, and then they take off back into the club or into the bar. So all I can do is hope that that was just a harsh way for him to learn his lesson, but also it's drugs, so you never really know. I mean, heck, he went up to the dude trying to get drugs in the first place, and you know that he was basically going the most simplistic route. Like, let me just go to this person and get high off of his supply and actually buy from a drug dealer. So he was getting down there to like the basic levels of just using drugs, and he got beat up. So I hope that that was something to stop him and that'll allow him to get help. I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but that was pretty intense. And then surprisingly, they did some good stuff with Patterson in this too, which I didn't think would really play as big of a deal as it did, especially that ending segment. But you know, she's going through her emotions and stuff, and she ends up talking with a psychiatrist again. It's like, yeah, I'm good. You know, she says like, you know, it sucked, but basically she doesn't say anything. The psychiatrist says all that stuff like, this must have hurt and this and that, and she's kind of just like, it's cool, I don't need the lessons anymore, it's all said and done. But then we get to the end of the episode, which awesomely, she was actually playing Xbox. I just, personally, as a gamer, I just thought that was cool. I was like, that's cool. So she goes to the drawer and she sees the org control that Borden gave her before. And that sends her down like a pretty deep spiral where she freaks out about how she was bugged before. And that was like literally within her tooth she was bugged. And she flips out and she's like ripping stuff apart, and she's flipping the couch and she's cutting through the seats and everything. She's flipping stuff and breaking it, and just her whole apartment is an absolute wreck by the end because she's flipping out now. So I am very curious where they're going to take that for the next episode as well, because I just thought that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. Like I mentioned earlier, Roman had like two very minute memories. So we start off with him having some sort of recollection of him taking some money out. Someone was deceased, and it's like, oh, maybe he killed someone and went in to pose as their next of kin. And then we find out that it was actually Jane under, you know, her name Alice Kruger. So who knows what the deal was with that? Like, why wouldn't Jane be able to do it herself? Was this, you know, possibly a very recent memory, like more recent than we were expecting? So maybe that's why Jane didn't do it herself, because they were all already going through the process of, you know, basically making her Jane. So there's just a lot to it. You know, it just makes me wonder, like, what in the world was going on there that they needed to even take the money out of the account. Like, they own the account to begin with, so why would they need to, you know, take all that money out and fake her death and, you know, stuff like that. So I'm assuming there's something to do with that. Of course, maybe the Alice name being, of course, a different person, that probably had something to do with it. Like, if once we go through with this, there might be certain ways to connect it back to this money, and then the government, of course, will take it, so we need to do it now and just say the person's gone. So maybe that's, you know, it's as simple as that. But for now, it's just another question that's built up. But I really enjoyed this episode. Of course, we have the ending where everyone ends up getting served, and we find out that the team is under investigation for aiding and abetting a terrorist organization. And I would love to understand how that came about, like that as the actual cause for them being served. I would love to understand why that is the case, because I can't think of a single thing that they did that would count as aiding and abetting Sandstorm. I mean, they've made certain weird deals here and there to kind of succeed in missions ultimately. So maybe that's what they're going for, and you know, that's the whole investigation part. But really looking forward to what we're going to get in this next episode. So really enjoyed this one. Of course, like I said, I'm looking forward to the next one, but I want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts were. And I definitely want to know where you guys think things are headed as far as this team investigation. What it might do to some of the characters, because I think specifically for, of course, you know, Patterson and Reed, I think this could have a huge effect on them to have the mental struggles that they're having and then be investigated at the same time, and what they might say and what they might do during these investigations, specifically Reed with kind of his outbursts that he continues to have, which, it's kind of been his personality in general, but it seems to be, of course, kicked up because it's like, it's drug related and him being fired and his entire life changing and him not really being strong enough to kind of fight it on his own, but constantly denying that he needs help fighting it. So it just makes me curious how things are going to play out there. I ultimately don't think that he's actually going to get fired, but they do say, it's in the promo, someone's leaving Blindspot, and I would assume that it would be, considering the episode, I don't think anyone's going to die and leave. I think someone will just be busted on some basis, and they will be relieved of their current position. So I would say the odds are high for either Reed or Patterson, and they just might simply say that she's unfit. For him, obviously drugs, definitely unfit and illegal. So for me, I think the two of them might be the highest, but it's hard to say with this show. Who knows what's going to happen next week. But I'm certainly looking forward to it. Like I said, though, definitely want to know what you guys think might happen with the team being investigated. And, of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below. Let me know. And thanks for watching.